Okay. Welcome to SOAR, Tara.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I am excited to have you on the show. I'm so glad that we were able to connect. The first time we were going to do this is when Texas got hit with those awful power outages and that bad weather. So I just want to check in first and just see, is everything fully recovered from that?
Yeah, we were very blessed. We didn't have electricity for about 5 days. On day three, I couldn't take it anymore. So my family went to a hotel and we came back and we were fully restored. Other than getting some minor things done with our heating system, we were fine. But of course, there are people in our city who are still recovering
Wow.
from water damage or burst pipes, and sometimes they didn't even know that they had issues until their electricity finally came up. And it's some people are still in a hard way, but we're very blessed here at home. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that everything's back to normal, and I'll keep everyone else in your city in my prayers that they get back to normal as
Thank
well.
you.
So, our
Thank you.
topic, you're welcome. Our topic is the girlfriend's house from dream to reality.
Yes.
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 And I would just love for you to give my listeners an introduction of yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, my story is a story to tell. I, as you know, am Tara Godby. I am a certified life coach. And I think in order to tell my story, and not in total, but a good portion of my story is to tell you how I got there. And then I'll tell you about the girlfriend's house. So I have been coaching for well over 25 years without giving you my age. And I really did it at a corporate level for most of those 25 years. Now, it wasn't my core job function. I was always in leadership. And so when comes leadership comes with mentoring and
Mhm.
things like that. And so what's interesting, and I think a lot of Black women can in corporate America um, can identify with this, is that I was also the one who always did Black History Month, right? And if there was a diversity and inclusion class, oh, I know who we can get to teach that, right? Which also parlayed into teaching like the 7 habits of highly effective people and strength finders and EQ and unconscious bias and all these other
Mhm.
things. And this was on top of my core job function. And it's really what I really truly loved about my job. So around age 40 or so, I started to think about, am I living my best life? Am I doing what I truly want to do? And what is it about my job that I love? And the other stuff was okay. The other leadership stuff was okay. But really, what I loved is connecting with mostly women, but those people who would come and talk to me about career development and getting to their next level. And
Mhm.
sometimes those conversations would parlay into life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, my romantic situations, my household, my children. And it's really what I really love to do. And so I thought about it and I said, let me put my money where my mouth is and go back to school and get a master's certificate in coaching. And that's what I did. I knew that if I was ever going to coach independently, that I needed to be credentialed and I needed to have the letters behind my name. I knew that because if I hired someone to speak from my corporation, that person had to have credentials.
Mhm.
And so I thought that this is what I need to do. So I went back to school for coaching and became a certified master coach. Um, and so that's a little bit about my story. Now, how did the girlfriend's house come into play? Now, that's to go back a little bit further. When I was in college, um, everyone's trying to figure out what do you want to do with the rest of your life. And I think that's really hard to tell somebody at 18 or ask somebody at 18, what do
Mhm.
you want to do with your rest of your life? And so many of us just kind of go pie in the sky, like, I have no idea. Well, I ended up going to school for television broadcasting. And I thought that, I don't really want to be behind the scenes, but I wanted to be in front of the camera. And I didn't want to be like Katie Couric or Cokie Roberts or any of those people, because I didn't believe in like being a news person, anything for the story, because I really care about people's hearts and their
Right.
and that kind of thing. So I didn't want to do that, but I thought that I would do some sort of talk show. And my thought, and this is back during like the Sally Jesse Raphael,
Mm-hmm.
the Jenny Jones, but I didn't want to do that. Like that was messy, right?
Right. Right.
So I thought that I would do something that was more around health and wellness, happiness, finding your inner peace. And this was long before we even heard of Ayanla. This was
Okay.
long before we even knew who Ayanla was. Yeah. And I'm really talkative, so always stop me if you need to.
You're good. It's good. I'm on the edge of my seat.
So this was long before we even knew who Ayanla was. And this is what the big dream was. Like one day I'm going to have a talk show and I'm going to talk to women mostly. And I say mostly because like that's 70% of my clientele. And we're just going to talk about how to just become your best self. And that was the dream. Well, dream deferred, because by the time I finished school, I had to actually work 2 jobs in order to put myself through college, right?
Mm.
And so by the time I finished school, I was already in leadership. So for me to go back and to start all over and kind of, I don't know, like kind of dig through the trenches in order to kind of get my feet wet and to get into broadcasting didn't make sense, because I was already in leadership roles. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I guess I've always been in leadership. So it wasn't until just about 2 years ago, and this is already after I've already been a full-time coach. I've actually left corporate and am now a full-time coach entrepreneur. So yay!
Yay!
I let go of those golden shackles, right? So after about that, I was in a seminar, and we talked about we talked about a lot of different things, and I was afforded the opportunity to have my own show, and that
Wow.
show is The Girlfriend's House. And The Girlfriend's House, and I'll tell you the premise about that. The Girlfriend's House was exactly what I was thinking about 30 years ago. And when we talk
That's
about
amazing.
it's amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about manifestation and we talk about the big dream, it's just weird how it came back. And so now I have a syndicated show on Binge Network TV called The Girlfriend's House. I've been talking about this concept of the Girlfriend's House, like I said, for about 30 years. And I knew I wanted to do a talk show. I didn't know it was going to be called The Girlfriend's House. But somewhere in those 20 years ago, I was talking to one of my best friends, and she is an MSW. She has her master's in social work. And
Mm-hmm.
she also is a registered nurse, and she has more degrees than you can think of, right? And I said, it would be awesome if we bought a house and I did my coaching out of this house, and you have your degrees, and we could bend together and we can do this. And it would be like a girlfriend's house. You would kind of come over and you sit and you relax, and we
Mm-hmm.
just have a chat. And actually we're doing coaching, and we're doing some other stuff, whatever mental health stuff that's going on. I forgot to mention she's a registered nurse and she's in the mental health facilities. Anyway, so long story short, when I got the opportunity to do The Girlfriend's House or do a show, automatically it came back that
Yes.
it should be The Girlfriend's House. And so
Mhm.
that's the premise. People come to my home, right? The Girlfriend's House. And I'm using finger quotes for those who can't see me. They come to The Girlfriend's House. And depending on where you are most comfortable, we may sit in the office or in the living room, or we might cook a quick meal in the kitchen,
Mhm.
and we might sit in the theater or the workout room, depending on where you feel more comfortable. And we just have a conversation on whatever topic you want to have, and we have our coaching session there. And it is just like going over to one of your girlfriend's house and having a really great conversation. But it's really geared towards what your what your goals are and your next steps. So how was that for explaining it?
That was a great explanation, and I just love it. I'm so in love with the concept and
Thank
just
you.
so in love with the fact of how everything came full circle. I
Yes.
believe that when we set intentions, and I say this all the time, when we set intentions, even if we're not consciously aware of them every day, they still work in the background. And
Isn't
it
that
and
the truth?
yes, yes. And it comes back around as those opportunities present themselves. So that
It's
was
interesting.
awesome.
Yeah, I talk about that too with my clients because sometimes we have to talk about a dream deferred. And so sometimes
Mhm.
we think it's gone, but God, source, universe, whatever it is that is your guide, will get you back on path. And sometimes we have to remember what was that big dream because often when life happens, we forget what that big
Mhm.
dream was.
Absolutely, absolutely, we
Yeah.
forget. So you had this dream over 30 years ago and it came to
Yes.
fruition in the exact right timing, right? Because that's the other thing. Things happen
Yes.
exactly when they're supposed to happen, even if it feels like it was deferred. So I'm just curious, what doors have opened for you as a result of the girlfriend's house?
Well, one, I get to talk to you today, which I think is amazing.
Oh, thank
What I
you.
think is no, I'm so excited. And yeah, so a lot of doors have opened and things that I didn't expect. Um, and I have learned to sit back and let it be. And I think that we always feel like we have to go, 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 go. So, especially because of COVID, a lot of people, unfortunately, their business has slowed down. But what COVID has done for some people and many people, it has allowed them to time to sit back and to breathe and to start putting things in perspective and to start prioritizing differently. So, what that has done for me is it has made my coaching business that much bigger. I actually have, you make out your postcards and you do all your networking and phone calls. But because of the girlfriend's house and because of where people are right now, I am getting phone calls and I am getting contacts from people who are not in this state, not in this country. But one, they want to do coaching or they want to piggyback off of the girlfriend's house and say, hey, I want to talk to you about that. Or there may be an opportunity for them to join the girlfriend's house. Maybe they're the subject matter experts. I have been reached out by 2 states to work with their state directly for their leadership
Wow.
team, one the state of Texas and one the state of North Carolina, to work with.
Congratulations.
Isn't that awesome?
It's so
To work
awesome.
with their leadership staff directly, because like I said, I have over 25 years of corporate experience. I have had the seat at the table,
Mhm.
right? And I do attribute that to the girlfriend's house, and Elan Life Coaching, which is my company, because people are out there and people are watching you and people are being drawn to you. And when we talk about perfect timing, that's when you just kind of sit back because it happens. So I have been afforded so many different opportunities because of Elan Life Coaching, because of the girlfriend's house, that I guess I'm more visual or more seen, for lack of a better word. And it has been a blessing to me.
Yeah. That sounds like a blessing. And it sounds like, they always say that luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
Yes,
And
Jim Rohn.
yes, so
Yeah.
you have the skills and you have been preparing all of your life, and then the opportunity presented itself. So that is very inspiring. And you were talking about COVID and how people are interested in figuring things out now. So some people, I've heard people say that they don't really have a dream. They
Yeah.
don't know what their dream is. So when people come to you and they're trying to figure out what their dream is, what do you say to them? Do you think everyone has a dream, or maybe some people just don't have a dream? Or what are your thoughts about that?
I do believe everybody has a dream. Whether we speak on it or not is something different. I think that there are people who have been hushed for a lack of a better word, or
Mhm.
they don't feel comfortable, or they feel like there's going to be some sort of scrutiny or judgment if they shared that big dream. And so it's really what we work together is we work in a safe space for you to just let it all out and just what is it that you think about? And sometimes we have to make a laundry list of ideas and just let you kind of build a branch, and say, maybe I want to do this. And then that could parlay into some other things in order to come up with it. But do I think that we all have a dream? Absolutely. I think that we don't necessarily give ourselves permission to dream big because we're
Mhm.
afraid of failure. Sometimes we're afraid of success. What will happen if it actually does come true? But do I think that everybody has a dream? I do think that is an absolute truth. I also ask people, and I don't know if you're familiar with Elaine Walteroth. She was the first Black editor in chief of Vogue, Teen Vogue magazine. She's now on The Real, I think. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I know she's
Okay.
on a talk show now. Elaine Walteroth. She has a book, and I'm reaching for it, called More Than Enough. This is one of her
Oh,
books. And she's an amazing person. But one of the things that she talks about in her book is she talks about the fact that we all have a dream. And she talks about, think about how you played as a child. Think about what role did you play? What are some of the things?
mhm.
What was your pretend? And that's when you can kind of tap into it because you'll start to think about, oh my gosh, I did think about that. Even with the girlfriend's house, I kind of forgot that that was the big dream until it presented itself again. So sometimes we have to kind of go back and think about what did I want to be before somebody told me I couldn't do it.
Mhm.
And that is that is removing some of that inner dialogue and getting some of that off of us that's so heavy that stops us from going there. So to answer your question, yes, I do believe we all have a dream, and I think sometimes that we have to work to uncover it because we have to give ourselves permission to go back into that very vulnerable space.
Mhm. I will definitely be looking up that book, More Than Enough. So thank you for sharing that. And I agree with you. I think that we all have a dream and that it looks different to some people. So it could be simple. So sometimes it's simple so people don't think it's really a dream.
Right.
Like finding your perfect partner. That's still a
Yes.
dream, or being able to retire comfortably. Or it can be something bigger like owning a seven-figure coaching practice. The other thing I think comes up when we think about dreams is sometimes we have a dream and other times we have a fairy tale. And what I
Mm.
mean by a fairy tale is something that is not really realistic. So I know I've talked to someone before in terms of finding your perfect partner. And when I talk to her, it sounds like she's looking more for a unicorn than a thoroughbred, right? And I mean, unicorns are, you rarely spot them. They're definitely not something that you're going to be able to capture and keep. It's kind of a mythical idea. Whereas a thoroughbred is something that is, high quality, meets great standards, but something that you can actually attain. So what are your thoughts around dreams versus fairy tales?
Yeah, that's really great. And I'm glad that you had that conversation with her. Um, and yeah, dreams versus fairy tales, like a couple things came up for me. One, I agree with you, and I kind of go back a little bit. I agree with you on your dream doesn't have to be a seven-figure or eight-figure or whatever it is, coaching business, or, I want to do whatever. That dream can be, I want to be a wife and mother, right? And not to minimize that by any means. Or it can be, I want to, knit sweaters for kittens, whatever that is.
Yeah.
It can be a dream. And I think that sometimes we think it has to be some big audacious goal, and it doesn't. When it comes to relationships, we have these ideas of what perfection looks like. And we
Mm,
have these ideas of, I'm not going to settle. And somewhere that became part of our vernacular. Like,
yes.
don't settle. You get everything that you want. You just do that, right?
Yes.
So we're looking for perfection, and then we're disappointed when we can't find it. Um, and that's where you're kind of talking about fairy tale versus dream. The other thing, so one thing that I do have my clients do when we talk about relationships is, yeah, write it all down. All that stuff that you want, write it down. Get hand to paper, write it down, make it crazy. It should be a list of 30, 40 things, write it all down. But in reality, what we have to realize is that no one is perfect and neither are you. So, what you have to realize are, what are some of my things that are my absolute no, absolute there, I cannot deal with not having that? And what
Mhm.
are some things that I can massage a little bit? Because at the end of the day, the perfect person for you is not going to be perfect. However, you are going to be able to live through or deal with some of their BS,
Mhm.
and they're going to be able to live with yours. And sometimes that reality check is what's needed in that conversation. And the same thing when it comes to that big dream. It may not show up in the exact skin that you may want it to, but is this something that is palatable? Is this something that you can say, you know, this is a variation of the dream, right? The girlfriend's
Mhm.
house I thought would be a house. It turned out to be a TV show, which brought the other things together, right?
Yes,
Was it the
yes.
was it the exact way I saw it? Absolutely not. But it happened and it was the big dream. The difference between for me for dream and fairy tale is movement. It's
Mhm.
getting up and going. It is making it happen, because we can daydream all day, right? We can sit here and say, oh, in a perfect world, I would have this and I would have that and I would do this. But it never becomes reality until you move on it. So
Mhm.
your fairy tale will be amazing, but your dream is something that you're going to actually move on, and you're actually going to take some steps, and it may not be the steps that you want, and sometimes you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and sometimes you go all the way around the corner before you get right back to that step. But the point of that dream is that you know that this is where you want to land, and you're willing to do anything for it. The fairy tale says, I'm waiting for perfection and it's going to find me.
Mm.
Does that
I
answer that question for you?
It answers it absolutely. I love that. The fairy tale is just kind of pie in the sky and you're sitting
Yes.
and waiting for it. And the dream, you actually have to put some effort into it. Yeah.
That's right. Right. A goal is, you have to have movement. You just have to have movement. If not, it is absolutely a fairy tale. And you can always tell people, oh, I'm going to do this one day. But if you never make action, then it was just a fairy tale.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. So, as we are talking about empowering people to tap into their dreams and rediscover or discover for the first time what their dream is, what about that person who had that dream 30 years ago, like you did, and they
Yeah.
feel like their dream has been deferred? What advice would you give them uh, if they're feeling like, well, I'm not sure it's ever going to happen because it's been deferred for so long?
Yeah, yeah. It can be discouraging, right? Because you always think like, and this is the thing where innately you know that this is where you're supposed to be. You could feel it in your spirit. Like, I
Hmm.
know that I'm supposed to be a, I don't know, fashion icon or the best cake baker or whatever it is, right? And you can feel it in your soul. That's how you know it's what you are supposed to do.
Hmm.
And I don't know where everyone's faith is, but I will say the best way to honor God is to do what you were put on this earth to do. That is how
Amen.
you honor God. So, with that being said, if you cannot stop thinking about it, if you wake up in the night, in the middle of the night, and they have ideas and things on your mind, and it's always surrounding this, everything that you do, it's like I can't get it out of my head. That is because it is your God-given gift and it is what you are supposed to do. So I encourage you that no matter how long it takes, no matter how many obstacles that you have to go, know that there is a plan out there for you to achieve it. And so what my job is as a coach is, one, to identify what that dream is, what that goal is, and then we're going to make actionable steps in order to get you. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to hold you accountable to say, what did you do today to work on it? And I'm by no means telling anybody, quit your job today and go and follow this plan. Like that just doesn't make good common sense, right? But it
Right.
doesn't mean that when you finish your 9 to 5, that before you go to bed, you can't brainstorm an hour, or you can't do 2 hours of research, or you can't bake a cake and be like, I perfected that recipe this weekend, and that's where you keep working on your dream. And after a while, what you're doing is you're building your muscle, and you're starting to build your confidence, and you're starting to get there. So that whole time frame thing, that's man-made. Everything is going to have its perfect timing, and everything's going to happen exactly when it should, and not when you expect it to. So it's never too late. Don't ever give up. And then I have a whole speech where I talk about your personal board of directors. At the end of the day, you are the CEO of your life, and you need to hire and fire accordingly, right? And so I also talk about who those people are who need to be in your circle to help you move forward. People who encourage you, people who are going to be there for you, people who you can bounce the ideas off of, people who are the subject matter experts. But that's a whole nother conversation if we want to go there. But and surrounding yourself with those people to help encourage you to get to that dream. So with that being said, it's never too late. And if it is something that you just cannot stop thinking about, that is what you are supposed to do. So let's work together and get you there.
Yeah, I love that because I think that we do know that feeling. We know that feeling of we just can't shake it. We just can't shake it.
Yes.
Uh, and it's okay to reach out for help, to hire a life coach to help you get through that process,
Yeah.
because no one wants to get to their end of their life and have regrets and think, well, how would my life have been differently if I had have actually pursued what I wanted to pursue? I know that's what motivates me. I don't want to get to the end of my life and have those regrets. Um,
Yeah,
but
I agree. There's a book that I read, and I wish I could tell you the title of it. I can't remember. But one of the things that stood out to me was the author said that you will find more dreams in the graveyard than anywhere else, because most
whew,
people, unfortunately, people let their dreams die with them. And there's just more dreams in the graveyard, right?
that's
Than
the
anything else.
saddest thing I've heard today. That just breaks
Yeah.
my heart.
But
Yeah.
it's true. And it's because we don't give ourselves permission, or we have fear, and we feel like we can't move forward. What will people think? We have that
Mhm.
be on us. People will think that, we have this idea of imposter syndrome. Like, no one's going to believe that I'm a great cake baker. And whatever it is that you have, I actually had a client the other day, and then I'll stop talking. I had a client the other day who on Facebook put a picture of some earrings that she made. And she said, would anybody buy these? And I said, do it anyway, because even if your Facebook friends wouldn't buy it, there's somebody in the world waiting for you to do just what you're doing. So we have to
Absolutely.
stop waiting for our inner circle to co-sign.
Mm.
And we have to be able to say, there is somebody in the world. So it doesn't matter if your Facebook friends say yes or no. Either way, you want to do it, so do it. And somebody in this world is going to be like, I've been waiting for you to do that. That's exactly what I've been waiting for.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because what I wanted to ask you about was what you said about the board of directors.
Yes,
Does that board stay static throughout your life or does it change?
it absolutely changes as you change, right?
Mhm.
I think the titles of the people, like I have 5 things that you should have in your personal board of directors, right? There's 5 titles, but whose name is next to that title absolutely will change as you grow. So does that. So does your circle, right? And I think that so often we hang on to things when
Mhm.
we should no longer hang on to them, and that's including friendships and connections. And everything has a season, and sometimes that season is over, and we have to let it go, because where you're going, maybe that person is not supposed to go with you, but we feel a guilt, and we feel some sort of angst or sadness behind letting things go. And I'm not saying you don't love that person, but love them from over there,
Mhm.
because now you need to step up your game, because your game is being stepped up. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. And
Yeah.
I know that is a word that um, I know I needed to hear And I'm sure other people needed to hear that. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, I wanted to pick your brain because you went to school for broadcasting, you're in
Yes,
television now, and I'm
yes.
actually doing a master class this week. It's called the Perfect Media Pitch Masterclass, learning how to get on, television, radio, all of those types of things. So,
Awesome.
thank you. What tips and tools do you have from your background in media and your personal experience about people either getting their own message out or getting their concept out to the media?
Wow, that's really interesting. For me, it happened in a time where I didn't know what was going to happen, and someone offered it to me. And it wasn't that I had to go out and pitch it or anything like that. And I know that that's not typical, but I will
Mhm.
say what I learned from that was, right? So, yes, it fell into my lap, but did it really? Right? So it fell into my lap, but did it really? I will say that this is why it fell into my lap. Um, I have experienced a lot in my, okay, I'll tell my age, in my 50 years of life. Okay. I have
Woohoo!
experienced it.
Up.
Yay, 50. I'm actually going to be 50 in a couple days. So,
Ah.
yeah. So in my 50 years of life, I have experienced a lot of things. I have experienced heartache. I have experienced pain. I have experienced poverty. I have experienced from my corporate world. I have had a seat at the table. You name it, I have gone through it. Um, and that could be an entire show in itself to tell my life story. I have been divorced. I have 4 kids. I have people in my family who suffer from mental illness, dyslexia. I have, you name it, I have experienced it,
Mhm.
not knowing at the time that it was all part of the plan. Okay. So let's keep that in our bonnet and I'll go back to that. What I have learned is that in corporate, I felt like there was a way that I had to show up, right? I'm
Mhm.
a Black woman with a seat at the table. I'm a Black woman who oftentimes, when I'm in the meeting, they would ask, "Are you taking notes?" No, I'm not the secretary,
Right.
right? Right.
Right.
But I felt like I had to show up a certain way. It wasn't until I left corporate that I had my hair braided for the first time, right?
Wow.
That I have been able to embrace, and this is weird to say, but it's true. It's my truth, my Blackness,
Mhm.
right? Um, and I think that that's very freeing. I've always done the right things right. I've gone to the right schools. I knew the right people. I carried myself the right way, whatever that was. And what I have learned is that all those experiences that I talked about earlier made me who I am today. When you're going through it, right? When you're dealing with poverty and homelessness and you're dealing with all those things, you're like, God, why me? But
Mhm.
what I have realized that it was all part of the plan. I had to go through those things so that now when people come to me, I come from a place of not textbook, like, oh, the book says that this is what should happen, but a place from been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, let's talk about it. I understand,
Mm.
I've been in your shoes. Now I understand that that's why I have gone through all those things and why I am where I am today. Now, you talked about the positioning. It wasn't until I left corporate that I started to become my authentic self.
Yeah.
I started to become my authentic me, sharing my story, sharing who I am, not being ashamed that I talk proper, not
Mhm.
being ashamed that I grew up in the projects and now I live in a very affluent neighborhood, right? Not being ashamed of any of the things, but becoming like I have my braids in now and and I wear soft locks sometimes and I'm just all these things that I was afraid to do. But what I have known, and I'm going to go back to your question now, is the pitch is your authenticity.
Mm.
The pitch is being who you truly are. When you make up the story and when you say, oh, this is what's going to grab them, even though there may be some truth to it, being able to sit in that is what draws the right people to you.
Mm.
And so being able to own that truth When I say that it fell into my lap, I think what fell into my lap was my ability to see Tara for who she is and to be able to accept her for who she is. And I don't believe that I had ever given myself permission before that. And I will tell you that when I was in corporate and I was 6-figure salary and all those benefits that you have in that, and I call it the golden handcuffs,
Yeah.
I felt I felt uncomfortable when it got closer to the end. I felt like I was heavy, like it didn't fit right. And that's because I wasn't living in my authenticity. And what happened is once I became the full me that I am, and I'm growing into every single day because it continues to grow, things started to happen. And so when people tell you, just be yourself, right? It sounds like lip service and we don't really understand what that means, but they are absolutely giving you the best pitch that you could possibly be, that they can possibly give you, because being yourself will open doors for you. And sometimes here's the struggle. We don't even know who the heck myself is.
Mm.
So that's the media pitch, is to just be yourself, because those people who will be drawn to you will be. And when you and tell your story in full. I forget that part of my story is that I have lupus and fibromyalgia, and that I have pain sometimes and I can't move a lot of days. And that's part of the story, because somebody is waiting to hear that so they can connect with you. Did that answer that question? Because I don't know if it really answered it, because I think that we're looking for some big, this is how you do it, and it's not.
Girl, no, that answered the question. It answered it. That was very powerful. And I think it really got to the heart of the question because, a lot of times we are looking for just give me the 1 through 30 things that I have to do that I can plug and play. But
Right.
there is no plug and play, right? It's about energy. When you put your energy out, other people are attracted to that energy, and so there's no plug and play for that. That's just who you are. And so I think the tip is to just, like you said, figure out who you are and get comfortable with that and learn how to share your story so that other people can connect to you.
I love that you use the word energy, because that's exactly what it is. People are drawn to your energy, just like you're drawn to other people's energy. And it's the same thing in relationships. It's the same thing, in your professional world, is that when you show up as your best self and you are just being, and you're exuding that energy, the right person will be drawn to you. And
Hmm.
like, I see things about, how can I get this man to love me? You cannot. You cannot. And I'm
Right.
so tired of people telling people, well, if you do this and if you dress this way, he will love you. Right. We just had this whole thing with the Derek Jackson
Oh, yes.
fiasco, right? And they're like,
Right.
if she got herself together, then he wouldn't have cheated. Wrong. It's who he is. It
Exactly.
is who he is. And there's nothing, women, that we can do, or men that we can do, to make somebody be something to us that they are not supposed to be for us. Same thing with job. You
Absolutely.
cannot force it. If you be your authentic self and you show up as your authentic self, the right opportunities will be afforded to you.
Hmm. I love it. So now that this dream is coming true for you,
Yes.
do you have another dream that you're willing to share?
Yeah. So I have a lot of dreams, and I wish you could see my office, because yes, I do vision boards.
Hmm.
And when you said that, my eyes automatically went to my vision board. And what does that look like? Like, I am living currently, and I'm so blessed to say that, and I don't take this lightly. I am currently living in my fantasy. So we say that word again. I am living in my dream world. I am happily married. My children are thriving. I have a business. I'm actually doing the TV show that I love. Um, so what are my next steps, right? When I look at my vision board that I am glancing at right now, it is really to do what I'm doing now on a bigger scale. I want to do it at a national, international level. I want, even though I'm on Binge Network and it's syndicated on 100 different networks, which is fantastic. What would that look to get a major deal with an NBC, CBS, Fox? What would that look like for me, right? What would it look like for me to tour? What would it look like for me to be able to become a household name, to be the next Ayanla, right? And I use her as an example. But then I have some other dreams. I am very connected and I work really closely with NAMI, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. I work very closely with our domestic violence shelters here. And I work very closely with the Lupus of America Foundation. Of those two, the NAMI and the domestic violence are my closest. I would love to be able to contribute and be more of a philanthropist on a bigger scale with those organizations. I have a dream of, and I started a nonprofit called Misrepresented. Like MS represented. And yeah, so misrepresented. So we're misrepresented and it's misrepresented.
Love it.
For women of color. And being an advocate and being a resource for those women and being able to see that broaden. So when I look at, like I said, when I look at my vision board, it is to do what I'm doing today on a bigger scale and to be able to give back with those communities into those areas of need that I have a passion for, and the biggest ones around domestic violence and mental illness.
I love it because currently you're living in your dream world, but you still have dreams. Yeah. And I think that as long as we have breath in our life, that we're supposed to have dreams, it's a part of still being here, still having a purpose for being on this earth. And when I asked that question, I specifically asked if, any dreams that you would like to share, because I think sometimes there are dreams that we're not ready to share. And there are people who will try to steal your dreams. And sometimes a dream is just in its infancy. And just like an early pregnancy, most people don't share that they're pregnant when they're 4 weeks pregnant. They wait until that pregnancy is a little bit more established. So I would love to hear your thoughts about dream stealers. Do you think that they exist?
So that's interesting that you say that, because I've heard this concept a lot of times where people say, keep your cards close to your chest, right? And don't share your dreams because there's dream stealers. I have a different food for thought for that, and bear with me. And I think that you have to do what's best for you, whatever that looks like, whatever that means, do what's best for you. But for me, I think that when I do share my dream, and I don't say you share it with everybody, right? But we talked about that personal board of directors, that when I do share it with my board and I tell them, this is what I'm thinking, right? They can help me kind of evolve that dream, or to massage it so that it's more workable. So I think that it's okay. And then you are more likely to make it happen when you share it. Because we can lie to ourselves all day long about we didn't have time. But when you have an accountability partner who says, how you doing on that cake baking class? We are more likely to have it happen, right? So when people say, I don't share my dreams, I don't share my thoughts, maybe we need to change our circle a little bit so that you have people who you can share that with, and identifying who those people are, because I do think that there's something to sharing that dream. That's the first piece. The second piece is, are there dream stealers? I love the example of, there is, when you go into the grocery store and you go down aisle 8, you do not see one kind of bread. There are thousands of different kinds of bread, right? And you choose the one that you want. As you're driving down the street, you see a Starbucks, but you also might see a Dutch Brothers, and you also might see somebody else, a Dazzle, or you might see a Tim Hortons. You might see 11 things. So there's not one coffee maker out there, right? I
Right.
may prefer Tim Hortons to Starbucks because that's what I want. So when there comes dream stealers, they may steal the concept, but they will never steal you. They
Mm.
will never steal what you bring the table. They can make your fried chicken, but they forgot to put that special spice in it. So it just don't
Yes.
taste the same. You know what I'm saying?
I
It
hear
just don't
you.
taste, something's missing. You ever had that? Just something's
Yes.
missing. And so what that missing is you. So they may try to mimic it, but it's not sustainable. It's not
Mm.
sustainable because it's not their dream, right? And some people have gotten rich quick off of something that they stole from somebody or off of a gimmick or off of something like that. But the problem is it's not sustainable because it's not who they are. It's not who they are innately. And we
Mhm.
talked about the fact that you've been dreaming this dream for years. You can't stop thinking about it. You go to bed, you make diagrams, you draw pictures, you think
Mm.
about this all the time. It's because it is innately you and nobody can steal that sauce. So do it anyway. And if
Mm.
somebody takes your ideas and they try to run with it, then they have shown you who they are. And as what is oh my gosh, Maya Angelou said, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. So if
Absolutely.
somebody shows you their true colors, then you already know, all right, I got to involve my board of directors because you are not on it.
Absolutely. Ooh,
So,
I love that take. I really appreciate that perspective. And it's true. If it's innately you and it comes from your authentic self, it can't be stolen.
right. And then you talked about, I'm sorry to interrupt, I apologize. You talked a little bit about it's in its infancy and I don't want to share it yet. So we have to identify, are we operating in fear and where does that fear come from? Just food for thought. I won't expound on that a little bit. But when you say it's in its infancy, I don't want to share it yet. What's that real thing that's making you not share it? Is it
Mhm.
judgment? Is it ridicule? Somebody saying that you're not good enough? Is it imposter syndrome? What is that inner voice that's telling you that says it's in its infancy and I just can't share it yet? I call BS. Any ideas in its infancy. Hell, Amazon is in its infancy still because it's going to be bigger than he imagined when he first started. It's
Yeah.
always growing. It's always getting there. So we have to try to check ourselves on why we won't share it, the real reason.
And you hit on all the real reasons. Those are all of the real reasons that come up. The fear, the limiting beliefs, all of those things. And that was the thing that I wanted to ask you was about limiting beliefs. On
Yes.
this podcast, I always talk about limiting beliefs. And I know one thing that keeps many of us from either pursuing our dreams or giving ourselves permission to do the thing or share the thing are limiting beliefs.
Yes.
But I also believe that even successful people, people who are living in their dream world, have had limiting beliefs and have had to overcome them. So I would love it if you could share any limiting beliefs that came up for you and how you overcame
Oh my gosh, I live in limiting beliefs every single day of my life, and we all do. Like you said, I'm sure that Jeff Bezos and CEOs of companies and people who are,
Yes.
I believe Oprah, Ayanla, you name it,
Yes.
we all have limiting beliefs because somewhere we believe we have, like I keep using the word imposter syndrome, but it's true, right? Am I really living this? And so I think that the exercise is when you want to do something or when you want to create something or you have something that's telling you I cannot do it and you have that limiting belief, you have to kind of ask yourself, how true is that? Like, where is that coming from? Right. And this is again, we have that personal board of directors, because sometimes we got to talk through it. Right. And then here's the other thing, and here's the big piece, because we all have them, recognize that it's normal. It is absolutely normal. And if though you may look successful in someone else's eyes, or you might look at someone else and say, wow, they're really successful. I wish I could have that confidence. We're all insecure about something, all of us. So, one thing that I tell my clients, and I even tell my children, is that, and my children are not babies, my baby's 19, let's be clear.
Mhm.
But what I tell them is do it anyway. And
Mhm.
if it doesn't work out, it's okay. What I learned from it was, right? And if you take that, then the next time you're doing it, You're coming from a place of, you're not doing it again. You're doing it with the knowledge that you learned last time.
Mhm.
So with that being said, you're always going to have that. It doesn't go away. It is human nature. But the real question is, how do you work through it? And that's by doing it anyway and accepting that it may not be as successful as I thought, but it was a success that I learned. I think it was Thomas Edison. And forgive me if I'm not getting these names right, but I want to say that, and I'm using a very arbitrary number, but I think he said they said, oh, you invented the light bulb. It took you 5,000 times. Let's say that, right? Let's say it was
Mhm.
5,000. And he goes, I had 5,000 different ways of how not to do it. And
Mhm.
so all those times that you are doing something incorrectly, and I'm using my finger quotes again, it's not that you are making a mistake, you're learning how to perfect it. And so it's going to happen. It's going to
Mhm.
happen. And then you'll get to the point where you're like, I can sit with that.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you so much. This has been an enlightening conversation. And I just want to close by asking you, share again exactly how we can watch The Girlfriend's House, how we can get in touch with Elan Coaching, and
Yeah.
how we can follow along with you.
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked. I would love to connect with everyone. The more, the merrier. So, The Girlfriend's House is on Binge Network. You can just look on your computer at bingenetwork.tv, and in the search, just put in The Girlfriend's House. So, that's how you can watch The Girlfriend's House. But in another way that you can always connect with me, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and that's at Elan, Elan, Life Coaching. So at Elan Life Coaching, or you can always reach out to me at elanlifecoaching.com. So there's several ways. I'm everywhere on every social media that I can think of. And that's Elan Life Coaching, Elan lifecoaching.com or at Elan Life Coaching. But check me out on The Girlfriend's House.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, Tara, for spending time with us today and just wishing you continued success and keep dreaming.
Thank you so much for having me. And we're both going to dream. We're going to dream big and keep dreaming bigger and bigger. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.